Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. As always, it is me, Steve Holt, and on the other end, Pascal Steve, who's just got in his monster, it's like tradition monster watermelon flavor.
Yeah.
How do you like it?
It is the best one so far, to be honest.
Agreed.
It is. I think that most of the other monsters, and I think that we are always ending up and talking about something like energy drinks, anime, and all that kind of stuff. But I think
It's my life.
yeah, the other monsters, they are sometimes just too sweet most of the time. I have nothing against that artificial taste if it's not over the edge. I have the feeling that with the watermelon, it's sweet and artificial, but not too much and also not too little.
Yeah.
And it's just, to be honest, it's also setting itself apart very much from the other monsters. I have the feeling. Very refreshing, very nice drink, and I would even drink it like without the caffeine in it and all that kind of stuff, because it's just such a tasty soft drink. It's
a shame. I know I've set this up. We talked off air that this was going to be the podcast talking about my experience judging. We're going to do, I think we should switch and go to just doing a general update, because we probably need to get that out of the system a little bit, or at least I did. But I agree. And I also agree because personally, watermelon is okay. Like the actual fruit, like it's okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Mm-hmm. But I like watermelon like sweets. Like they're way nicer than actually watermelon for me. Yeah. Like I also like fake banana like sweets. They just,
that's true,
to me, are like...
I think there's always a fine line between some things that taste amazing when it's the artificial taste. And I think everything with banana taste tastes amazing as well. Not everything, most of the things. Do you know, I don't know, you've probably had it as well in the UK, Steve, those small candies, which is kind of formed like a banana, but tastes
foam.
like... No, it's just
foam.
Could it be foam? I don't know. It's
like hard foam.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
But spongy.
I've never liked those when I was young, though. So not everything tastes great with banana taste, but something like milkshake or kind of whey or so, it's very great when it has banana flavor. And watermelon is normally something that I don't really like that often, except for beverages, to be honest. And there was a time when I was actually then moving to Berlin where I was drinking a lot. And I had like two friends of mine during that time that were already living in Berlin. Also musicians, and they took me around kind of different places. And there was this one place with that one cocktail that was called Watermelon Man. And it was an amazing cocktail. It tastes actually like this one. And then just imagine with alcohol in it. Holy shit, you got drunk very easily because it tasted so amazing, and you just like were nipping on it the entire time, such as you did with your whey shake or what it was just now.
Oh yeah, just sipping on it. It's just so easy to just... You forget there's alcohol in it, apart from there's like probably that little kick at the end.
Exactly.
Where like, there's a bit of heat here.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, because I brought it up of like, why isn't there a drink that tastes exactly like this without caffeine in it? And this is what I thought and was saying to Katie even the other day, where we had a discussion about like the taste of Red Bull. I actually enjoy it. I don't know whether I would enjoy it without the caffeine in it. And perhaps caffeine does give it that taste. But I was wondering, why isn't there an energy drink without caffeine? I know it's kind of conflicting, right? Yeah. It's not, that can't be sold as energy drink, but such as, I don't know, Coke, right? Without caffeine, or Coke without sugar or so. Why isn't there something like this for people who just enjoy the taste of something like Red Bull?
I wouldn't be surprised if they brought something out like that, but I don't know if, to me, it's like whenever you have a decaf version of something, it never tastes like the caffeinated version. True. And there's something to caffeine that's a flavoring aspect. Like, I don't understand the food science, but I know whenever I have like decaf coffee or I have a decaf like Coke or Pepsi, it's never quite the same. Or even decaf, you think, no, you can't get decaf Dr. Pepper. But whenever I have the decaf version, it's not quite as good.
True.
So I don't know if, but Fanta, for example, is caffeine free. Sprite is like Sprite and 7-Up. They're all caffeine free. and they taste amazing. So I don't know if I'd love it if, like you say, I'd love it if they could bring something out that tasted like it, but had without the caffeine, or maybe half caffeine or something.
By the way, before we are deviating too much, just very quickly, do you know the background story of Fanta?
Fanta, no.
So I don't want to deviate once again too much, right? But
it's education for everyone.
Yeah, kind of. Right now, they are selling themselves of being like hip and square and kind of multicultural and all that kind of stuff. And in reality, it was a beverage that was originated from the out of the what's it called again? The NSDAP, and so basically the Second World War, the party, the right-wing party in Germany, because there were kind of things that you couldn't get anymore to produce Coca-Cola in Germany, and then they wanted to have like an alternative drink, and out of that Fanta then arose. And it's quite interesting to then see how they are now selling themselves, when in reality, of course, I think it's absolutely fair if a company goes through a lot of changes, and especially over the decades. I think that you can't really make someone responsible for what has happened 100 years ago or so, you know. I know that this isn't exactly 100 years ago, but I'm just saying like what has happened like back then, because so many people like say, okay, you need to pay for your sins of back then. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, they couldn't actually position themselves. I can see that. But what does it do? It's just kind of sending out a message to please people, right? But in the end, the company probably has changed. It's not that there are Nazis behind the desk still sitting there and kind of thinking about ideas on how to overcome the world and all that kind of stuff, you know. But it's very interesting, the entire story behind it. And there are lots of companies in Germany, like old traditional ones, who have a lot of blood on their hands as well. Also, when you just take a look at Deutsche Bank, for example, pretty nasty history, but it's interesting, that's for sure.
I'm thinking, this is a really stupid comment, really. Like, they're going to introduce this Fanta, you drink it and your hair goes blonde, your eyes turn blue.
Yeah. It was just because there was a debate around this, not very much so public that everyone was just like bragging about it, but because they were actually at some point reintroducing the old classical design, and that was the design out of the Nazi era, where it was like, holy shit, this is back to the roots, so you actually have to make up for it, you know, or take position. And yeah, it was just interesting because I think many people aren't really aware of the history of a company like this.
No. I guess Fanta's owned by
Coca-Cola
now.
Yeah.
So they've changed hands probably now anyway. So it's like, if it was originally German, it's probably very Americanized now.
I mean, I think it was always part of Coca-Cola, but because of supply issues back then, they wanted to actually then have an alternative product for the German market. And then there was this one guy who was, I think, a Nazi, who then came up with the recipe, and they also then, the entire advertising was really kind of German and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, once again, this is history, and I think that history can be so interesting. When we are young, we never really care and bother about history, when in reality, it's so freaking fascinating of what has happened in the past and everything. And when you're in school and you are in history class, you simply don't give a fuck about what they are telling you, right? And if you think about, because interesting enough, we are talking about updates in our life here on the weekend. I couldn't participate because I was massively sick. Like last Improvement Season podcast, I already said like I'm not feeling that well, and it actually turned to the worse over the weekend. I had very high fever, could just like lie at home. And during that time, there was Katie's grandfather. He turned 90 years old, and he is still one of those, one of the victims and also people who experienced the Second World War. And if you really think about it, there's an entire generation now passing away who can't really talk about it anymore, right? So many people have not gone through that time. There's so few people here in Berlin left that can firsthand talk about the experiences and what has happened. And Katie then said that they sat down, they actually took a look at pictures and all that kind of stuff. And he just talked through the entirety of his life, basically. And I even said, I wish I would have been there, because I wish that I could have heard him talk about his experiences, because he was a kid, but he remembered everything. Yeah. And how crazy is that? You know, that it's not that long time ago that something like this happened in our society. And if you then also think about the effects of what the Second World War had, like how many people died, the very cruel things that happened during that time frame, how crazy that is. As a kid, you can't really grasp it, and now, when you really think about it as an adult, maybe even having kids yourself and all that kind of stuff, having a little bit of a better understanding from a social aspect and from a magnitude of what has happened, it's just so fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's actually scary, because like some of the, like COVID, for example, if I can say that and not kill the algorithm now. I keep seeing YouTube videos where they're like, I can't say the word. I know we were like that. Is it
still like this?
I don't hope it's not. Anyway, but what I was like, to have lived through that, like that's going to be history. And people will look back and they'll be like, how did they even have such things? Like, how did that ever exist? We have all this new, medicine and stuff, and they probably couldn't create vaccines in like a second or whatever. So it's crazy to think back. And it's crazy also to think like the time span between like World War I to World War II. And it's like, it feels in my head, I don't know, as a kid, I never thought about it, but it's like, for me now, I'm like, there's not going to be a World War III. It's not going to happen. But I mean, I don't know, that could happen. And then to live through that, I can't even imagine that COVID would be nothing in comparison to the things that it put on and the strain on your life. So yeah, it is crazy. I think history is actually, for me, much more interesting than like news. Like you can learn, I feel like I learned so much more from the past, not to say that I'd spend much time doing this, but I learned much more from the past than like what's happening kind of within the news day to day. So yeah, it's definitely fascinating.
I mean, technology advances at such a rapid pace, and of course, because of that, it's not one-to-one. If you were to look back and compare like different eras and decades in the history of humankind, then it was very similar to another, because technology didn't really exist back then, or wasn't really advancing as fast, because right now it's at an exponential growth. But human psychology hasn't really changed. And human psychology is also then that we think of ourselves much more highly than people before us. And also just in general, we think of ourselves that we are much more important than we actually are. And when we are then looking back and taking a look at people, I don't know, in the 40s or so, thinking like, what the fuck was wrong with them? Like Second World War, how the fuck could they end up in this position? In reality, this could always happen, especially considering the entire world situation at the moment. It's not that different, because human psychology and human just like emotions, they don't really change and they don't really evolve as technology evolves. Actually, then technology could even be to our detriment if you really think about it, when our emotions don't change, but technology has then the capacity of actually being that destructive as well, you know. But yeah, it's of course going down a completely different avenue, and it's definitely not our thing, to be honest.
I only have one more comment that kind of relates to that technology thing. Me and Charlotte watch true crimes. We haven't actually watched one for ages, but we really enjoy watching true crimes.
Oh, it's amazing,
And like, I watch these, I'm like, there's just no way any of these crimes could happen now. Like, there's no way there could be a mass murderer like some of the Ripper or example, like things like this, where they just go around killing people. The CCTV, like everyone's watching everywhere, everyone's got phones. So technology in that sense has made things safer, but like you say, there's pros and cons.
I think when we are on that topic, I think it still happens, because back then there was, for a very long time, up until the 70s, I think, serial killers, there wasn't even a term for it. It was a new thing, because no one thought that someone has the tendency of actually the desire and also the drive to go out there and kill several people in a pattern, like fashion. And first in the 70s, they actually then created the profile of a serial killer. And then there were probably way more people before that, and also during that time frame and afterwards. It's just, I think you only catch the people that you know of who are serial killers, but you don't know how many are actually serial killers because you never catch them. It's kind of like survivorship bias. You only see the people who are very successful. The rest is just like dropping away, kind of in silent and in the shadows. And that's why I think that there are still plenty of serial killers probably out there.
I would, if I was to bet, I would say there's less, only because of like the mobile phone thing. Like everyone's trackable and traceable somehow. And like, I don't know, I watch some of these and they just have like 15 bodies underneath their fucking house. And I'm just like, this could never happen now.
I think it can, especially because we are evolving with technology as well. And especially when we're just taking a look at thieves and just like, I don't know, also hackers and stuff. They are always one step further or in front of the law, because they are the ones trying to find kind of the loopholes and stuff like this, right? And the law always tries to close those loopholes. And if there's an incentive or one way for someone to take advantage of something, he has, of course, a motive of trying to find that loophole for himself. So I think that they're still...
At least it's harder.
Possibly. Don't know. Could be.
You're scaring me, Pascal. What are you doing in Berlin?
Yeah.
So, trust me, there's people doing this.
Exactly. No, but I really do enjoy those kind of TV shows myself as well. Yeah. Like, honestly. And I think that Netflix does them very, very, very well. Like, honestly, I enjoyed so far each and every one of their true crime shows about one serial killer that is then over a couple of episodes, like Ted Bundy, like the Nightcrawler, or what it was called, like crazy things. And also here, the what's it called again? Pogo the Clown, like this guy. I
don't know if I saw that one.
You probably saw that one, but it wasn't like called that. But he had like, it's crazy. He would dress up as a clown, right? Exactly, and
he
buried all of the boys under his house.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like they were just like digging out like 17 people or so, and the bodies just kept on coming. It's crazy.
Yeah. So crazy. Anyway, we can bring it back to fitness. Do you know what your illness was from on the weekend? Did you get? I
would very much assume that it was from Tony, because he had also fever symptoms. For him, he was vomiting and also having diarrhea, which I didn't. But that's also typically not me. Whenever there's kind of like a bug or so, I feel that my stomach is kind of grumbling the entire time, but nothing comes really out. I'm feeling just unwell. And that was basically the case. And very, very funny, because on that Wednesday when we had our last recording, I even said like, hey, no matter what, I'm still getting my calories in. There was this one day where I simply couldn't get the food down. It was way too hard. And ever since I'm into lifting, there were only so far 3 times where this actually happened. One time due to food poisoning, and then on that day I couldn't basically eat anything at all anymore. Then second time, I think it was even last year, when I had this one day where I was like feeling absolutely awful as well. And then this time, and I very much tried to have hyper palatable food, but I was just like, even by the smell of it, I felt sick. And that's why I couldn't, I even got down 700 calories, primarily coming from protein, but it was one of the hardest 700 calories to swallow in my entire life, to be honest.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we pride ourselves on providing personalized service that will take your physique and knowledge to the next level. If you're interested, check the description and sign up.
Yeah, I think everyone's been that sort of level of sick where it's just like the thought of food is just nauseating.
Yeah.
So you just have to pick and choose your battles and basically getting as much protein as possible is probably the best way to go. Even though, like, I don't know if was the same for you, but sometimes it's like some foods you can eat and other foods you're just like, I don't know what it is. That food is not going down.
And on that day, I couldn't really get anything down. I've tried and I was just like, okay, I'm not even continue to try it because I don't really want to make matters worse. I don't want to cause any more stress onto my system. And who knows what's down inside here, my stomach area, which I could aggravate by then eating something or so. And that's why I just accepted that for one day, I'm probably not going to eat like plenty of calories. What does one day do? Nothing really. It's one day out of like 10 years or so, and that's why I just accepted it. And in the end, I couldn't really stress about it anyway, because I just was sleeping the entire day and felt terrible.
Yeah. And then was that Sunday? And then you were back on Monday?
That was on Friday, where I was just like completely out. And then on Saturday, I was just like lying around because I was still kind of feeling the after effects of it. Sunday, I felt already much better. And then I actually went back to the gym on Monday, even though that I didn't really feel 100% recovered. But the unfortunate thing is that next week I will be on holiday and I won't have access to the gym for an entire week there as well. And I didn't really want to not train for like 2.5 weeks. And I was just like, all right, I have to get into the training session, or get the training sessions done, even though that these may not be the most productive sessions. And on Monday, it was very, very hard to push through. I even came back home to Katie, said like, this was a fight to get through it. Yesterday, much better already, was a push session. And here today I did legs, and today I was feeling nearly back to normal, which is good. Yeah.
I guess in that sort of situation, it was actually asked, Mike Chalice asked me, he was like, because I pushed for a 6th week because I had my tattoo, and that 6th week it didn't feel that productive. Kind of sounds like probably what that this week's being for you in a little way, like you're having to fight to like get good sessions in any way. And he was like, why didn't you just take an active recovery? And I was like, well, I would have if I hadn't literally taken one a month ago. And I guess for you would have you potentially would think to do that, but it just doesn't work timeline wise.
Exactly.
But
and
people
for me, it was
that.
like I accepted the situation then, because on Thursday I started to really feel kind of, all right, something's off here. And this is where I also then took a rest day. On Wednesday, I told you, did a leg session. We did our recording and said like, even on the day of the training session, I didn't really feel great, didn't really feel strong and so this was probably already that I could feel that something was creeping up. Thursday, because I was feeling the way that I did, thought like, all right, let's take a rest day just to see how things are. And then on Friday, I was just like hit very hard and I needed to actually accept it. And said to myself, all right, I see this now as kind of like 4 days deload, complete time away from the gym, completely resting, not really forcing in steps and all that kind of stuff, so that on Monday I can be at least back on my feet, getting the training sessions done from Monday then to Saturday, and then leave on holiday then on Sunday.
It makes a lot of sense. And I wasn't going to bring this up. I don't know why. I'm kind of in two minds to bring this up. But in a sense, you didn't go back on your word, but like you said, I'll get my food, blah, blah, blah. And then you didn't manage to get it in.
Yeah.
So I had a similar experience. And I'm not disappointed in myself. It's similar to you. It is what it is. It's just, we're attached to a process and we want to be able to achieve a certain result. But last week we were talking about how I was uncomfortable with food. But I didn't want to start a mini cut. I wanted to push through. Come Monday morning this week, trying to eat my oats that I normally have for breakfast with dark chocolate on, blah, blah, blah. Like been eating that entire my like contest prep and then throughout my off season, 2 spoons in and I'm like sweating, nauseous. And it takes me about like 45 minutes to try and eat this bowl. And then it's probably similar to how you felt, I imagine, on that weekend, where you just like couldn't get food down. And this is what I felt like. I literally like sat after I ate that meal and I was like, I actually can't now be productive because I feel like I've had like a stress response to this meal. I think there must be something more to it than just satiety, but I can't understand what it is. And I was just like, there's no way I'm going to be able to eat my food today. Already that week that I deloaded, I was struggling to hit maintenance intake. I just couldn't get food in. Like I just, when you just, all right, I guess you haven't been to this level of extreme in this mass. And I don't know, this may be a very unique thing to me, but it's that point, I would say it's similar to like when you've got food poisoning or something where it's just like, it's nauseating the thought of eating food. Anyway, so I was just like, I ate that and then had like, I'm having chocolate milk here. I had some sweets in the morning just to get calories in. And I'm like, I'm fucking mini cutting by default because I can't eat calories. So the last like 3 days I've had like 2,400 calories or something. And I'm like, right, it's a mini cut then. Like I can't do anything about this. If I tried to force feed, I was literally like I don't even understand it, but the reason I wasn't going to bring it up because I'm almost like, fuck's sake, Steve.
Embarrassed.
Like, why? Like, it's not, it's like, it is embarrassing, but it's not, it's just matter of fact. But I think it's hard for some people to understand the feeling that I go through. But I mean, you know me better than anyone. Like I'll push through something if I can push through it. But I was just like, this is a wall I can't get through. So yeah, similar to like for you, but a bit different in that I wanted to push through, not mini cut yet. But I already feel so much better like 3 days in and like feeling semblances of a little bit of hunger here or there. And I'm like, that's such a nice relief of a feeling as well. But still, I'm still struggling to eat the food. Like I'm here with like the chocolate milk post-workout, fruit juice. It's just ridiculous.
I have a couple
I'm
of
hoping
thoughts.
the mini cut solves me.
Yeah. How long are you planning on doing that for? Just like up until the point where then you feel kind of
pretty
reset.
Much. Yeah, I would imagine at least 2 weeks, basically. Yeah. If it's then after that, I feel pretty decent, straight back into a mass. Like I don't need to I'm not doing this for the fact that I need to lose body fat or any of those reasons. It's just to get that appetite back so I can then reach a new high. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping.
I mean, in the end, I don't think that it has anything to do with being hypocritical or anything like, or I don't know, seeking the easy option or anything alike. So I don't really think that you need to be embarrassed or feel like you need to justify that situation, because the way that I see it is that you've been, there has been new evidence that came to the forefront and you're just adjusting based on that evidence and you make the right decisions moving them forward. And sometimes you can plan ahead. You can plan your route, you can plan out your schedule, but then once things come up and once new evidence presents itself, then you need to make an adjustment instead of just like being stubborn about it and pushing maybe up to a point where you're just causing more stress and by that more harm than good. And I think that you're also at a level where you know yourself much, much better than anyone else and you know what's good for yourself, and you also know that pushing through something like this is probably not beneficial. And I also don't think that it has anything to do with a cop-out mechanism such as with other people, because you can either see it from two perspectives. You do it because it's kind of a necessity in order to then move forward again, kind of that one step back, 2 steps forward approach, or you are the person who does it for justification of wanting to do something different. Because you don't want to do the uncomfortable or hard things. And I'm not referring to uncomfortable sensation or hard or uncomfortable things and hard things to push through that barrier of like, if you can't eat, then you can't eat. It's something completely different than not being able to hit the macros by the end of the day because there was a social event. And then trying to find justifications as to why you couldn't really hit the macros. One has a physiological reason for it. The other one is more like a psychological justification for yourself, just to kind of don't be too hard on yourself. Of like, no, it was all right, wasn't it? And in reality, you know that it wasn't the best decision. And if you really want to get something out of it, then you shouldn't have done it. And I don't think that you are in the position of that cop out, but it's more like evidence has presented itself and you need to adjust based off of that. And now you are you're basically at a crossroad, or you were at a crossroad, and one is going down the dark road and you don't know where it leads you, or going down where the bunnies are just like jumping around for like 3 weeks, resetting things and feeling fresh again to continue walking down the journey and route.
I couldn't have explained it better myself. And yeah, I can 100% attest to the fact that my last off season, certainly I took mini cuts where I just thought I should take a mini cut here, just for reasons of like, I don't know, again, partitioning ratios, or it just, I read it in a book and I thought it made sense, and it didn't come from a very rational decision of I need to take one. And this decision was literally, it was on Monday morning. I was just like, I have to. I can't push through this. And it's just, I don't know if, again, for people who have been there, when you like, you're in that position, I'm like eating food and I'm like sweating because my body's like, no, like don't put this in. Like it's a clear sign. And then like, I just can't be productive in my work day either, because I'm like sat there like, whoa, why was that such like a traumatizing thing? It's so weird. But yeah, like you say, it's the mini cut will only run as long as I need to just get this appetite back and feeling in a proper place to be able to put food down. Because I had such a good run post show as well. It only was like that last mesocycle. There's a few points where I was like, that's where I moved to the fruit juice. I moved to the chocolate milk, what have you. And where I started to hit that kind of barrier, and I was like, but at least I managed to get up to 195 pounds. Whereas I think last off season, I think I pushed up to like 185 maybe, and then mini cut, and then I hit 190 mini cut, and then I hit like 200 mini cut, and then I hit 205. So I'm going to make bigger strides this time.
I think it's actually more of a mature approach rather than an immature approach, because you are coming to the acceptance way earlier than you did in the past, maybe, where then it was more numbers driven rather than sensational driven. And I'm not saying that you always should listen to your body, because the body can give you false signals as well at times. But I think that the more experience you have, the more you can actually revert back to listening to your body, I would say. I think that someone who has been in the game for like 20 years knows how to interpret those signals very, very well. Whereas someone who has only been in the game for 2 years, maybe not so much, right? And I can only kind of compare it to something like a computer. You're having a lot of tasks running at the same time, and the computer is slowing down, and you're just opening up more software, more tabs in your browser, and the workload just keeps accumulating over time. And then at some point, you're just wondering, why is the computer so slow? What are your options? Either you're fucking just restarting the computer and you're probably in a much, much better place and the computer is then running as per usual, or you just keep on going and try and hope for the best. What's probably the better solution? Fucking restart that thing. Even if that takes a little bit of time, it's probably saving you time over the long term, right? Because you're not as stubborn and it slows you down, and then it costs you like, each and every single second costs you actually 2 seconds. Whereas if you just were to accept restarting, it may take you like a minute during that time frame, but then over the entirety of the next hour or so, you've probably saved some time.
Yeah. It's like you said, like taking a step back to take 2 steps forward, that sort of thing. But I like that analogy, because so often I have that on my computer and I'm like, I should just update it and like reset it and it's going to be fine. So I'm like I said, as soon as I just accepted that, like I really didn't want to accept it on Monday, and as soon as I accepted, I was like, oh man, like that's just a relief that I don't have to start like already pounding these things back or whatever. And it's been just nice, like having like just a meal of like an omelet with just some veggies, and I don't have to worry about anything else as well. And I just in myself feel fresh again. And like I think my sleep will be better once the heat goes. My sleep will start to be better. And I think I too often end up comparing myself to like the fitness industry standard of like natural bodybuilder in their off season has to get like 40 pounds above their stage weight or whatever, and like push for the maximum of off season weight or what have you. And too often again, like you said, you can look too much at what other people are doing, or what like let's focus on a number, but how you responding in real time. And I know this about myself, that I'm someone who just functions better a bit leaner. So I mean, it was an obvious sign to. I had no choice anyway in this situation. It was just like I either mini cut or I like try and just miss my numbers every day.
No, absolutely.
Like, feel crap.
You always need to then weigh the benefits against the cons. And as in a situation like this, like what's the benefit of then actually continue pushing up to 200 pounds or so? For what? Right? And may there be a benefit in just resetting and then pushing even further? Probably. It's kind of the same when it comes to repetitions and training to absolute failure, right? Especially when it's not the last week or the last session of a mesocycle. I think that then, go for it. Just like push it out. Go beyond what it is that you're capable of recovering from. And even in the rep itself, if you're uncertain of whether you can hit it, go for it, because now you have the chance without the long-term consequences probably of it, because afterwards it's just the deload. But in the midst of a mesocycle, why are you then going to absolute failure and running risk of possibly some injury, possibly missing some lifts from a psychological perspective? It's not that great. And also, do you really need that in order to actually then see the hypertrophic outcomes that you would like to? Or just reset, so basically re-rack, take a little bit of rest and go for another set maybe?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my main news, apart from judging on the weekend, which we're going to talk about in some depth as well. But so just basically I'm almost repeating my last mesocycle numbers. I just made some exercise rotations that I'm going to carry over into my next macro cycle, just because I'd been running like hack squats, or not the Cybex for ages, but since I moved to this gym, I've been running it. So that's whatever, like 6 months, what have you. So ages. And I'd already been running hack squats on the Matrix my whole contest prep. So I've been doing like a hack squat of some kind for like over a year. And then dumbbell bent over rows. I did those throughout my entire contest prep. And then I brought them through into Yorkies as well. So I'm just rotating some movements that I'm like, I've been running them for ages. They aren't, the SFR's dropping off basically.
Yeah.
Starting to beat up at things. And I'm also like, I don't know, I just got to the point where, stimulus fatigue ratio basically dropped off. So that's another thing that I've done, is I just rotated some exercises, which has been really refreshing as well. I don't know about you, Pascal, but I was at one point thinking, I need to vary exercises like every 1 to 2 mesos, and I just do that, which was not the best. And then I got into a bit of a mindset, I think particularly with prep, where I was stubborn with sticking with the same movement, because I was like, I need to make sure I hit my same performance. And now I'm still in that situation where I'm like, but I want to keep hack squats in, so I keep improving performance. I think a certain level of stubbornness is good, but variety is an important part of hypertrophy, I think, and periodization. You just don't want to overuse it. But I don't know if you're like that with some movements where you're just like stubborn to it a little bit.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
We have a little bit of a different opinion about exercise selection, exercise variation rather. Because I don't really think that it's very important to have a huge variety of exercises in there. I think that everyone is, of course, built differently. There are probably a handful of exercises for particular body parts and muscle groups that work particularly well for you, that have a high SFR reading. And I would then say, like, milk those out for as long as possible. And if you then want to change things up, then you may have like a 1 or 2 fallback exercises that you then can change out for a while. And then it's kind of more rinse and repeat. But I don't think...
That sounds like my philosophy.
Yeah? All right.
That's why I thought I kind of described that. Okay. Maybe it sounded different.
Yeah, it sounded like more that you are putting more emphasis on exercise variation. All right.
So I think I'm with you. Like, you have a handful of good exercises.
Yeah.
Milk one out once it's the SFR is dropping off, which is probably going to be months, not like a couple of mesos. It's going to be like multiple, like almost a macro cycle worth.
Yeah.
Then that's where you can rotate it.
Yeah. It's even something that we've talked about in the past, even that I think that too many people are looking for changing exercises up way too frequently. And I'm someone, when you're coaching with me, it's very rare that you're going to see me change your exercise selection, unless, of course, in the first initial mesocycles, especially in the first mesocycle, we are testing things out a little bit more. So you give me feedback, and I, based off of that, can give you then feedback in return and say like, okay, let's maybe try this exercise because apparently it doesn't really work for you. We had a look over the exercise itself, the way that you executed it. It looks solid, but if it doesn't really give you what it is that we've been looking for, then maybe a different exercise gives you exactly this. And then after like 2 to 3 mesocycles, there won't be really a lot of changes anymore.
Yeah.
Because then it's just about ticking off the boxes, going in there and trying to progress over the long term with some repetitions and with some load. And I think that perhaps it's not enough for some people. Some people strive off of that. And the ones who I've seen had the best progress most of the time were the ones who were very much embracing that, of just like getting better at the things that they have instead of trying to look for something that makes them better.
Yeah, I think it's particularly when you're more advanced. I mean, there's arguments both for and against, I guess, but because progress is slower, like you want to at least hit like some sort of new PR with a movement, right? You don't want to just keep repeating like, oh, I ran hack squats for 2 months and I got to a like best performance of this. And so I rotated it out and then I rotated back in, did it 2 months. You want to hit like a new PR really. And that's good for us naturals. It's going to take months on months on months.
Yeah.
So you need to have a bit more. And if someone needs a bit more spice, and I do this a little bit with like I'm more stubborn with other muscle groups, but biceps for me, because like it's just like one of those, I'm like, I vary that up. If I need some spice, and I get bored of bicep training very quickly. So if I rotate that maybe a bit more freely, and isolation-based movements a bit more freely generally.
Fair enough. And that's the same how I do things as well. I'm a little bit more adamant about the more bread and butter exercises. So often the first movements of a session, and then everything that comes a little bit later, something that I'm more flexible with or more willing to debate of whether we can change things up, especially when it comes to single joint movements. Like, it's not that it's overly complex and that one movement is giving us such a tremendously different results than the other movement. And this brings me kind of to one of the studies that has come out in regards to then overhead extensions, for example, because it just makes me very skeptical about the results. Because I can't really see that overhead extension has such a significant difference to then other tricep movements, for example, in terms of then the hypertrophic outcome. I'm very skeptical about it. Maybe the results were the results. I'm not well versed enough in kind of data science to then interpret the data and to break it down, analyze it, reanalyze it, and see whether they've made an analysis failure there or so, or mistake. But I'm just like, from observational data and also just from anecdotal data with myself, it feels good, but I don't know, right? Something like this, where it's like, how much of a difference can there be between like single joint movements from one exercise to the other? And that just makes me skeptical of like, some movements feel better than others. So for example, for me, for curls, D-handle cable curls are just like very, very good for me. Whereas something like dumbbell curls, if I don't do them, especially inclined, right? You're sitting there, it just doesn't really feel great to me. Maybe the first time that I'm doing them, but then all these sessions afterwards, not so much. But in it for itself, it's kind of a single joint movement where you're just like flexing at the elbow and coming down again, right? Extending then the elbow. So how much of a difference do you expect there to be when you're going through a movement like this?
Yeah, I guess someone might argue the difference to the long head is that like more stretched position on the tricep. But I think even in that study, it showed that the other heads of the tricep also grew better than other exercise variants. And I'm like,
that was the thing. That was
I don't feel that much tension in the rest of my tricep apart from the long head. So for me, like, especially tricep movements, like anything that mimics kind of a skull crusher type of variant, which doesn't really get you that big stretch on the long head, unless you do like that one that comes all the way back. But I kind of prefer anything that kind of I get into this position. That's like my tricep, just like the whole thing just feels blown. So yeah, I don't know. It's tricky.
Yeah. But because of this, I'm still very flexible of like the exercise selection for a single joint movement, because I don't think that there's a significant difference between the movements. And if so, then the difference is probably insignificant. And then it's more about like what feels better for you.
Yeah, I think generally that's a sound approach to like exercise selection for me. Like, there's so many exercises that are freaking. Like, I was even doing, what was I doing today? Double arm dumbbell curls. So I was keeping my elbows ahead, like doing this. I was like, you know what that's really like? A fucking preacher curl machine. I'm just like, everything's so similar, isn't it? Like, it's just different variants.
Absolutely.
And you just try and see what feels good.
Often I'm even just going by what I fancy. I know what this sounds like. It's not that I go in there without any kind of clue or any kind of structure to it, but I just started doing single arm curls on the preacher curl machine. I'm positioning myself a little bit differently so that maybe my bicep is more so in a stretch position. And then I'm just focusing a little bit more on it in a unilateral way instead of in a bilateral way. And just to see what it feels like and stuff, right? Because at some point it's more about like, okay, let me just try this, right? Small variations, small deviations from how I normally do them to see, hey, because it could feel better. The downside, there is no real downside because you're still going through the range of motion and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it feels marginally weaker and marginally worse, or it feels much better or marginally better. And you can only win because you have no new data and new information that you can use for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Cool. Were we going to do 45 minutes?
Yes, exactly.
Well, we're right there. That's awesome.
Perfect.
I think that was a good chat.
Absolutely. Then thank you very much, guys, for listening. As always, hit the like, hit the subscribe. And we have now for you guys, no, this is something that I'm going to say for the next episode because it perfectly aligns with you being a judge and everything about contest prep. So guys, I just leave it here. Thank you very much for tuning in, as always. And I guess I'll speak to you next week. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Steve. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.